Now, a common question that I get asked is, Coach, who is the best quarterback to study? And I think the best quarterback to study when it comes to a throwing mechanics standpoint, a throwing mechanics, like I guess you could say foundation, is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Now, do I think Aaron Rodgers probably consciously thinks about all of the stuff that he does? Probably not. I think he is just one of the most pure passers of the football and does a lot of things correct mechanically that I feel every single quarterback who's, elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college could try to replicate and add to their game. Because at the end of the day, guys, you have to be your own quarterback. You have your own way of throwing the football. You have your own throwing motion. You have your own body type. Not everybody's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but there are some key mechanical things that every single elite passer does that you want to try to add to your game, and that's what we're going to discuss today. So honestly, when it comes down to key things that you want to add to your game, it's all about your throwing sequence. More importantly, a concept called upper body and lower body dissociation, aka separation, and having your hips rotate through before the football rotates through. And that's something that Aaron Rodgers does very, very well. But when you know what to look for in a quarterback, you can start seeing these similarities in all the top passers. I'm talking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I think Anthony Richardson. I know he's unproven in the NFL, but has one of the most pure throwing mechanical motions, very similar to what Aaron Rodgers does mechanically. The motion's different. Obviously, their body types are different. They're different types of players, but mechanically with their throwing sequence, their stride, their base, their hips, their shoulders, that is what similarities that you want to add to your game. So that's what we're going to discuss, right? So obviously our throwing sequence, you guys, I break it up into 4 specific parts. Part number 1 is going to be your base. Part number 2 is going to be your stride. Part number 3 is going to be your hip rotation. And then part number 4 is us releasing the ball. And it needs to happen in that order. We build our quarterbacks, or at least coach our quarterbacks, from that specific standpoint. I don't mess around too much with how you go back with the ball. A lot of quarterback coaches or even quarterbacks spend way too much time with, getting to the L, doing this, doing that. Every quarterback's going to have their own different way of throwing the ball because we're all made different. Not a single NFL starter throws the ball the exact same as another NFL starter. No backup. Nobody throws it the exact same. So you shouldn't try to replicate that. You want to replicate the sequence. So when Rodgers gets set up, the perfect base that you ultimately want to be in is probably 60 to 70% on your back leg and 40 to 30% on your front leg. You want to try to keep your weight back. A position I tell my quarterbacks to get to, which is a baseball phrase, is I will say you want to keep your head, your knee, and your foot stacked, which essentially means like stacked on top of each other in a column, and your back shin ultimately wants to stay straight. Now, the reason why you want to get there is because when you have all of that weight on your backside, you can take that weight and transfer it to your front leg. That transfer is where my power comes from. But that transfer of weight from back leg to front leg needs to happen at the right time. What a lot of quarterbacks will do is they will get to this position, and as soon as they take a step with their front foot, all of their weight will transfer to their front foot. They will push off of their back foot to create the front stride. And when all of your weight shifts forward, that prevents you from getting to a position called upper body and lower body dissociation, which is how we produce something called torque, aka your back hip rotating through and the shoulder and the football trailing behind. They call it chasing the hip with the ball. So your weight gets back, right? That's where we have to be. But when you take a stride to the target, no matter where it is, whether it's a 5-yard route, 10-yard route, or a deep ball, your front stride needs to get down. But as the front stride is making contact with the ground, you have to maintain that weight back position that you see Rodgers have right here. You have to maintain your stacked position. Head, knee, foot are stacked. And the reason why you want to do that is because when your front foot gets down, that's when we separate my upper body from my lower body. Front foot gets down. As you're going down, you want to slightly rotate your front shoulder back, and that's when you want to start your backstroke. And the only way that you're going to be able to rotate your front shoulder back this way and get proper separation where your shoulders are going in this direction as your foot is stepping towards the target is by maintaining weight on your back leg. You guys could all try this right now. Stand up and shift all of your body weight onto your left foot. Then try to rotate your shoulder this way. It's going to be very awkward and you physically can't do it. Put all of your weight on your back leg now and try to rotate. It's going to feel so easy and you're going to be able to rotate your whole entire body in this direction, right? So that's where we want to get. Your front foot gets down and we maintain the weight on my back leg to allow my shoulders to delay. Now, what happens next? How do we bring the ball through? And that is the timing of when you take that weight on your back leg and you transfer it to your front leg, okay? Now, before I explain how to do that, fellas, if you're a QB watching this and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you guys would like some more information on where we're traveling to and how you can sign up. So again, guys, very first link in that description below. We are going to be coming out to San Francisco, Orlando, Phoenix, Charlotte, Austin, Las Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles, California. So again, guys, very first link in that description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camps. Let's get back to this video. So now, like we said, right, your weight's obviously got to stay back. Your stride gets down. So now when you get that front foot down, and that front foot almost serves as an anchor, you guys, your shoulders are back. At this point, I don't want to be thinking about my arm. I don't want to be thinking about, okay, now I'm going to get my arm to this like vertical 90 position. Or like you see how Rodgers has a little bit tighter of an angle. It's not a perfect 90. That's totally fine, you guys. I am not super picky about this type of stuff. I'm picky about your sequence and your kinetic chain. As a quarterback, we are a rotational athlete. The way we generate power is very, very similar to how like a baseball player generates power when he hits the ball, or maybe how a golfer generates power when he swings a golf club. Because what does a golfer do, right? He takes the club back, and then what does he do? He transfers his weight, he has his hips rotate through, and that brings the club through. That chain reaction is torque. Then same thing with the baseball player. He's got the bat back here. He keeps his weight back. He takes a step to the pitcher. So now when that front foot's down, stepping to the pitcher, what does he do? He pivots off that back toe, hip fires, ball fires. We're rotational athletes, guys. We generate power and efficiency the same way. So that's what we have to focus on, right? My weight stays back so my shoulders can go back with the ball. Front foot gets down, and now let's focus on transferring my weight. I want to shift my weight from quad to quad. I think so many quarterbacks, and this is why I love watching Rodgers, are hip throwers, where they just, okay, they step, their weight's back, but then they just focus on rotating their hips. But if you just rotate your hips and you don't transfer your weight to the front foot, your weight can kind of stay on your back leg, your chest can be pointed up in the air, and that can make a lot of guys miss high. We want to take the weight from the outside of my right quad and shift it to the outside of my left quad. And when we do that shift, you guys, that is naturally going to rotate your hips. You don't even have to think about rotating your hips, and we could get rotational power, but also ground force power, which is essentially power from my legs. Now, again, the whole goal is to get my hip to be able to be here as my hip to be able to be here as the elbow and the football are behind it. And the only way I get there, you guys, is by having my shoulders rotate back as the front foot gets down and maintaining my weight on my back leg. Now, the reason why this is important is that's obviously power, but this takes pressure off my arm. You guys, to be a rotational thrower, you have to use your lower body, your hips, and your core. Because if you guys throw, because this is the mistake that a lot of guys will make, what they'll do is they'll push all of their body weight forward on the front stride. So let's pretend like Rodgers, when this front foot got down, his weight was not here. Let's say all of his body weight was here. And the issue is that when all of your body weight shifts forward, this back foot gets left behind you. So when your back foot is left behind you and your shoulders are not actually going back, what will happen is that when you throw and you get to this position, your elbow and football are going to be in front of your back hip, and that's you throwing all arm. So for those of you quarterbacks that have a problem with arm pain, elbow pain, shoulder pain, that's most likely the reason why. So what you need to focus on is keeping your weight back as you take a stride, because now your front foot's down, your weight is back, your shoulders are delaying, your shoulders are behind the front stride, and now those hips can fire through, and that whips the arm through. And guys, that is how you're able to get more accuracy, because a lot of QBs that have that weight push forward and all their body weight shifts forward, they're not using their hips, so they'll do anything for power because they have to get the ball there. So what quarterbacks do is they'll pull this elbow down, they'll lean out of there with their head, because as a QB, remember guys, we're a rotational athlete. We're going to rotate one way or the other. And if I'm not rotating here, I'm going to pull the elbow, pull the shoulder, pull the head, which will make my release fly in the opposite direction, and I'll be real wild and have this real high release point, and that's what leads to inefficiency. So guys, this is not only for power, this is not only to take pressure off your arm, it's also for consistency. Because as a quarterback, to be accurate, you honestly want to watch Rodgers, see how still his head is. And you see where his front hand is. Front hand's up by his collarbone. His shoulders, his hips are level. Only reason he can do that, and just wherever he flicks his wrist, that's where the ball goes, is because he uses his lower body so properly. So guys, those are the things that you want to pay attention to when we're trying to study a quarterback or study a motion, and those are the things that you want to try to apply to your game. Think about the throwing sequence, because it's only going to give you more velocity, it's only going to help with accuracy, and it's only going to take pressure off of my arms. So that's why I love Aaron Rodgers. But guys, now that you know what to look for, when you watch every every top passer of the football, they all have that throwing sequence. They all do things differently with their ball carriage, with their release point, with their take back of the ball, but their throwing sequence is what remains the same, and that's what we want to apply to my game.